Welcome, everybody, to the Just Add Bourbon podcast. I'm Jimmy Don J.D.
And I'm J.D. Dan. What's going on?
And it is another beautiful Sunday evening here in the hills of Eastern Kentucky. And in America, it's a holiday. It is Super Bowl Sunday. We are pumped. JD's Chiefs are going to try to defend their Super Bowl championship from last year. And the old dog Tom Brady is going to try to come out and prove that he is the greatest of all time. JD, are you ready?
I'm ready, baby. I'm ready. I think the debate's over, though, bro. I think Tom's the GOAT, man. Right now, Tom is the GOAT.
Tom,
you can't argue with it, man. Like, you can.
Tom's the GOAT, man. But here's the thing, like I'm not necessarily a Brady fan, but he's the GOAT, right? Right. Mahomes is the next Brady.
Yeah. I agree.
And thank God he's playing for the Chiefs, right?
Absolutely. I ain't mad about it.
So we're going to have a fun show today. We're going to do what we normally do, which is talk some politics and some current events. And then we've got a few topics that Chastity dude is talking. Look at this. Hold on. This is JD's sister-in-law. I just want to throw this up here real quick.
That just happens to be the same score my brother told me earlier.
Is it?
You might come out with it wrong, though.
So she's a copier, is she? Chastity, are you going to let JD talk to you like that? Yes. No, I'm kidding.
No, she's definitely not going to. It's
fine. We know better than that, right? We know Chastity was raised up Tomahawk. We know. Yeah. They're not quite up there. But anyway, JD, we got a lot of cool stuff. Of course, guys, we want you to join us in the chat. We're going to have a special guest. So as JD and I kind of get going here, I'm going to have to do a little producing on the fly and get the link to him. But we're going to have some fun. And JD, let's kind of start the show off because I want to build, right? I want to start off on maybe kind of a somber note, and then we'll build to the end where we'll talk about the Super Bowl and our predictions, right? So first things first, really probably a childhood icon. And I don't know if icon's too strong of a word, but somebody from my childhood passed away this week, and that was Dustin Diamond, a.k.a. Screech from Saved by the Bell. I used to watch that show all the time in the mornings before school. And, Screech was one of the most popular characters. And then he had, some different things happen, I guess, as time went on. But he had
a little bit out of hand for Screech.
Yeah, Screech got a little wild. And he had cancer and lost his battle with stage 4 cancer. So we wanted to kind of give him a shout out and, an RIP Screech. Because like I said, he was, really growing up, Zach, Kelly, Slater, Screech, Jesse,
Lisa.
The whole bunch.
Lisa.
So
it's crazy. Like, I remember the 90s, man, and how much I love Saved by the Bell. I love Saved by the Bell, man. And I would never admit that in the 90s.
Right.
When I was a kid watching that. But I remember coming home and spending all kinds of time on TBS, man, watching Saved by the Bell and loved that show. I don't know how I could relate because, they was out in California and things were so unrelatable, really, to what we was going through here. But I guess they were just teenagers and just the coolest people. You thought that's cool. But Saved by the Bell was a big part of my childhood in my, teenage years. Kelly was so hot. Michael, she was, yeah. And, all those girls were hot, man. Jessie was hot. You ever watch Showgirls?
And, well, that's what I was getting ready to bring up was what I remember when Showgirls came out. I bet that movie got just crazy initial viewings because of Jessie from Saved by the Bell, basically being a stripper in that show. Absolutely. I'm not going to lie, I was a fan.
We got to see your tatas, bro. How could you not?
Yeah, I was a fan. That was Jessie from Saved by the Bell. What are you supposed to do? Yeah.
And, I guess life's been tough on a few of those people, man. I guess Lisa really suffers with anxiety and depression, and I don't think she comes out of her show or her house much. I guess we're doing a reboot of Saved by the Bell. I'm not sure when it's supposed to be out, but, of course, Screech wasn't invited to be a part of that anyway. And I don't think Lisa's able to be a part of it because of her crippling anxiety.
Really?
Yeah. Lark Voorhees, I think is her real name.
Mm-hmm. Lark Voorhees,
I think she's a doll. I always thought she was a doll. And I guess the Slater's going to be there, and Zach's going to be there, and Kelly's going to be there.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
I think Jesse.
His brother is Mike D from the Beastie Boys. You're saying
Screech's brother.
Really? Because, look, dude, Mike D was like the heart and soul of the Beastie Boys. Like, and he passed away too. I think maybe he had cancer as well, and he passed away. And I love Mike D, and if that's true, that's crazy. I had no clue.
Oh, so Michael Harrison, sorry, is the new Saved by the Bell thing already rolling on the Peacock app? I guess that's what he's talking about reference to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I'm down with some Saved by the Bell reboots, man. And we talked about on here the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air documentary that has been done, which was actually amazing. I really enjoyed that.
It was really good. It really was. It was probably the first thing. Oh, he's saying no, it was MCA. Wait, wrong one. No, it was MCA. That's cool. That's interesting either way. That's kind of crazy. So, JD, our guest, is actually in the waiting room here.
Bring him on.
You want to bring him on? Since our next topic, we're going to stay in a somber mood. So let's welcome to the show the man, the myth, the legend, Glen Martin Hammond. What's going on, brother?
Just wishing I was you, big boy, and wishing I was you.
Well, I mean, most people are. I mean, I understand. But,
not bad,
but I appreciate you saying it either way. Yeah. You ain't tell me nothing I don't know. So Glen, we appreciate you coming on and joining us. And Glen and JD actually kind of had it worked out because I didn't think I was going to get to be here today because I was in Cincinnati this weekend for a dance competition.
How did you get back so fast?
Well, they ended up changing everything up. It's all the COVID stuff, but they ended up doing it all yesterday. And they weren't going to get done until like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And they ended up redoing everything and finished it yesterday and did all the cheerleading today. So we just spent the night and then drove back today and got home in time to, obviously do this. Now, next weekend, I have to go to Louisville for Jam Fest, where I'm going to do my ballet routine.
Awesome.
I finished second. I finished second this weekend.
The best part about it is he can barely hear. He's talking so loud right now that he can't. It's because he can't hear from all that yelling that was going on.
That's right. Well, when you're up there on stage, Glen, and
and Jimmy, he's fully dedicated to the story. He's going with it.
Yeah. When you're on stage, Glen, and it's so loud, it makes it hard. And I forgot to wear my my earplugs. What are you going to do? So we were talking about Screech from Saved by the Bell. Passing away, and we kind of started the show in the somber mood, and we're going to move on to a somber, and that's why I thought we'd go ahead and get Glen in here. Is the Kentucky Wildcats basketball team continues to struggle. Now, gentlemen, I have said all along, and my UK fan, I know he's dying. He's like he looks like I feel on the inside. I ain't gonna lie to you. So the Cats, like I've said, we usually start slow. Ever since Cal's been there with the young guys, we start slow. And this year's been weird anyway because of COVID. And like in my heart of hearts, I want to believe that we're going to get this thing figured out by the end of the year and go to the tournament, make a run. I ain't seeing it. We're just not that good, man. I said in the first half, we played really, really well. We got them in foul trouble and played well. And we had one turnover. Second half, we come out and we couldn't do anything but turn the ball over. We were literally up with, I want to say 10 minutes to go. We were up like 10 to 13 points, something like that, and ended up losing by 10 points. Yeah. It's insane. I've never seen anything like it. Glen, just break it down to us.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed more and more, we don't have a point guard.
Yeah.
When Cal's system is entirely predicated on a point guard that can break you down, that can drive, penetrate, and dish the ball, or they can finish at the rim. We do not have that this year. I hate to say this much, but listen, I've listened, I've watched. We do not have a point guard. It's embarrassing, and I believe too that we don't have a system that needs to change to utilize the talent that they do have. And I say that much. I'm not I can't say I'm not a fan of Boston, but I just don't see it. He's out of control half the time. He doesn't protect the ball. He's not strong with the ball when he has it. He cannot hardly finish around the rim, and he doesn't make anybody else better on the floor. And when you have those combinations, and it's a growing pain to the college game, whatever, where he thought he'd just come in and it's going to be like, well, I'm going to play anyway in the NBA. I don't have to mentality. Whatever the case is, it's not clicked for him on this team. And if I was Cal, I'd really look at running Mintz at the point, and then putting Dante Allen at the 2 guard. When Clark comes back, put him in at the wing, and then I'd run with Kenyon Brooks and Isaiah Jackson, and then rotate after that. You get 1 out of 4 games out of Sarr. And that's it. He had a decent game last night when I watched, but he's not anything that what I think all the fans believed would be coming to play. He's not there. His physicality reminds me of 2 kindergarten kids knocking, and swinging at each other who gets particular crayon. And it's bad. It really is bad. And you have to I believe that the assistant coaches, since Orlando Antigua has left, the quality of the assistants has been subpar at best.
No, I agree. JD, you kind of agree the same thing?
Yeah, I've tried to state on here before, but you can't overstate how important your staff is as a coach. And the people you surround yourself with and your program with, it's a culture, man.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you lose someone like, Orlando Antigua to, he goes off to work somewhere else, and then when you bring in new guys, and sometimes it's not even about how talented they are. Sometimes it's not the right chemistry. The players aren't responding to that kind of coaching style. There's a lot going on, man, inside a team.
Sure.
And, it's sad, man, that this team just doesn't seem like they're going to be able to get it together in time.
Well, what about Kenny Payne leaving and going to the Knicks? I think that's made a huge difference too, especially with their bigs.
I think so. I don't know who did they replace him with to work with the bigs. I don't see it. Like I said, I really liked the Isaiah Jackson kid. And
I do too.
Where he's looking at going pro or whatever would be. He needs to stay there 2 years. Once he rounds off a consistent offensive game at 6'9.5", 6'10", with his athletic, the guy is a freak of an athlete, and I don't mean that. It reminds me a lot of
me,
the guy behind him.
Oh,
they did, yeah, for sure.
I thought you was going with me on that one. I didn't know.
My bad. I'm sorry, I missed that one. But and then even the other kid from New Jersey, I think's got a lot of potential. But he's going to be there 3 years. He's not he's not even a 2-year kid. The Lance Ware, I like him. He's got good form on his shot.
Plays hard.
He plays hard. Some of the fouls that's been called on him, if you look from different camera angles, is like, who did he even touch? I was like, I saw one in one of the games, and I was like, where was that one? I guess he got a little too much air on the guy, but it is what it is.
Well, let me ask you guys.
I have to
go ahead, Jetty.
That I've not watched much basketball at all this year.
You're not.
But I keep hearing that Boston's a black hole, man. Like when he gets the ball, he's shooting. He ain't doing nothing else with it. That ball is going up. Is that true? Like, is he a me player, not a we player?
There's some truth to that, I think. He's just not that good, JD. He's just not. When you think about guys like him that are touted like that,
the accolades he came in with, right?
The Walls, the even Shea, Knox, all those guys. Even though like Knox was kind of disappointing in a way, he still had his games, and the guy's dropping 14 points a game. I think he's scoring double figures every game. But here, that was actually it's a great segue into my next question about Kentucky and about Cal in particular. There's not another coach I'd rather have other than Calipari, but I almost feel like his system, and he even said it the other night on his call-in show, I feel like his system is almost antiquated now. And there was an NBA scout said that they're just hoping with BJ Boston that it's Cal's antiquated system that is the reason he's not playing well. Do you think, Glenn, that Cal's going to have to, because right now basketball is played kind of like the Golden State Warriors, where it's spread it out, shoot a three. You either shoot a three or you shoot a layup or dunk it, and then you play as good a defense as you can. But scoring is the premium. It's not necessarily defense. And you've seen that in college football too.
Yeah, let's not get too crazy or carried away with that, because if you go back and look at Golden State, they had DeMarcus Cousins. They had another big guy that I'm trying to remember his name. He was a kid that had originally gone somewhere else, and they picked him up after the first 3 years. He was a 7-footer, but they were all agile. They were agile big men that can move. Then they brought Cousins in, who could help with offsetting the more traditional post players. Tristan Thompson with the Cavs when they had those two series, and unfortunately, for DeMarcus' sake, he got hurt. You have to be able to. I don't believe that you play one style of system. You saw what happened when Patino, prime example, Patino's Bombinos, even he got away with it towards the end, and look how much more successful he got. And he made that run. He learned that much, I think, when North Carolina, we lost to them the finals of the region. And then after that, we spread the floor well. You have to have good shooters, but you can't be it can't be a donut. You can't have anything. You can't have a system where there's nothing in the middle. I don't, either it's got to be a presence in the sense of blocking shots and rebounding, putting some baskets in, because otherwise they're going to spread the floor with you and match you up outside the arc. And if you can't, and say we do that much, we have nobody right now that can break anybody off the dribble. If you really watch Kentucky right now, they're bringing their big men all the way out towards half-court line to set a pick to get the point guard's defender off of him. It reminds me back when Eddie Sutton was here, Sean Sutton was running point, that they brought LaRon Ellis all the way out there to do the same thing. And that tells me not very gifted athletically, not very gifted with the basketball. So, that's your biggest problem. I really believe had we had a point guard in this team, we might not be 5-12. We may be, 10-7. But
like Higgins, for example, like if Higgins would have just come back.
Yeah, you might be a little bit more friendly with Higgins than I am. I just never thought mentally he had it between the ears a lot of times with some of his antics on the floor. But I do agree that we're going to have to look at changing the system up. You're going to have to find some other shooters. You're going to have to get some people that can complement the opposite side of the floor. When you have somebody like Clark, who I think personally is, unfortunately because of his injury, is the best player on the team that can actually penetrate, pull up, and finish at the rim, and he can shoot. I believe once he we saw that in the Georgia Tech game. As time goes, and he's able to do that much, you have Dante Allen on the opposite side. If they're collapsing, you're kicking over to him, and if they do collapse, they're kicking to him, I should say. And if not, he's finishing at the rim. So we're really missing that component to this offense in a rather huge way.
So just to both of you, and JD, we'll start with you. How do you think the year is going to finish up? Like, where do you think we're actually going to end up at the end of the year?
I don't even know are we going to play the NIT, boys?
You can. We don't have a winning record.
Oh, so see, I think we play the SEC tournament, a couple games, we go to the house. That's how we end up. We're going to end up about how many more games we got left?
I'm not even sure.
I'm going to say we're going to go about we're about 9 games, 10 games, and we'll be done. Does that sound
you agree with him, Glenn?
Listen, it's bad.
It ain't good. It ain't good. All right, so
9 or 10 is not good, and it's not a good bad either. I hate to say it. I mean,
right.
Especially when
it's just
somebody $9.25 million for this.
Right. Well,
my issue too is the last 5 years now, his record is very, very, very complimentary, almost synonymous to one that we wanted out of here even before then, and that was Orlando Tubby Smith.
Yeah. So this begs the question for me, like when it comes to recruiting, because we're still getting the recruits. I mean, the recruits is the problem. We've got the horses, but are we getting the right recruits? Even though they're 5 stars or 4 stars or blue chippers, I mean, we don't have shooters. We don't have people. I feel like he's not doing as good a job as he's done in the past as finding people for his system. Does that make sense?
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I think. I think that he has recruited shooters, but he runs them off because he won't play them. I mean, you look at Baker, Juzang, even Wilcher, you had guys that could drain it. And he wouldn't let them play. They made one mistake. He would, put them on the bench. I mean, we saw that in the NCAA tournament against Auburn.
Kyle Wilcher? Is that who it was?
Yeah.
The big white kid?
Jazane would have been a great compliment here this year, but he was homesick. I mean, I can't blame – you can't really blame that on Calipari. But what I can tell you is I think that this goes to show you what I said before as far as our assistants and how they're assessing talent and what they're not doing. And that's what needs to be tweaked. I really believe that we have a major problem with the assistant coaches. And I've said that much. I posted that on House of Blue, on Cats Illustrated. And I'm listen, I mean, proof's in the pudding. I mean, go back and look. Show me, prove me I'm wrong. We had, when Cal was there, when he started off, he had the best group of assistant coaches there is. And since that period of time, after we lost to Wisconsin, we've not had it. I mean, it's just not been there. I mean, Fox and them were great, but they were missing one player on that group too. I said all along, and but he's missing it. He's I wonder sometimes. I've often thought if the Wisconsin game didn't take something more out of Calipari than what we realized.
It may have, man. I said, you really think about that team, how good we were, and we played the one team that could maybe beat us, and they just and they wouldn't beat us 3 more times out of 10, that one game, and they got us.
We beat ourselves though that game. You're up 5 points with 4 minutes to go, and you have 2 shot clock violations, and you don't call a timeout to settle your team down and get things going the right way. We beat ourselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, so let's move this discussion on to that makes me sad. I want to build as we go.
I want to say, if you think about what Glenn said earlier about having a point guard in Cal's system, you think about the one team. Well, there's 2 teams that's really had a good point guard since Cal's been here. That's John Wall and Brandon Knight.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we won a national championship with Brandon Knight. And it goes back to your point, man. It's a good point that he was the general on the floor. He was making good decisions with the ball. Yeah. And we had Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and AD, and
man, it was Teague is who you were talking about as the point guard of that team that won the championship. It was Teague.
I thought it was Brandon Knight.
No,
he
we
took
got
us to the final game, wasn't it, or final?
Yeah,
four?
He got us to the final game. We just got beat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember he wanted to make the shot against Ohio State in the Final Four to win the game.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. I remember
exactly where I was at. Too.
That was a great game. I mean, you biting your fingernails off, and Josh Harrelson, with shutting that guy down.
Yes. Yeah. That was Greg Oden, wasn't it?
No.
Started with an A.S. Seringer or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
anybody
it was when
beats Ohio State. I'm tickled to death for though.
Same.
No, and that when Harrelson went out and went out of bounds and threw the ball like it was a baseball at that cat. Jared Solinger, I think was his name.
Yeah, Jared Solinger. That's it.
Yeah, and no, I was at my uncle's house watching the game. He was sick then, and I was there, and I was going bananas, and he was too. As sick as he was going nuts too. It was awesome.
We went to the Miranda Lambert concert in Pikeville and walked across the D-Dubs and watched the ball game on the big screen. A big crowd there. It was awesome, man.
All right, so let's talk a little Washington, D.C. and a little Q. And this week you had Marjorie Taylor Greene basically, I guess, get booted off some of the committees that she was on. And I know this makes JD very happy. As far as, I guess the first question is, look, clearly she had some alternative beliefs, right? Verging on maybe a little bit scary, especially when it comes to Q. But now I followed Q from pretty much the inception, and there was a lot that they predicted or talked about that actually came true and was correct. It really kind of fell apart towards the end where, the things they were saying, it was just stupid. It just kind of got dumb. I don't know, how to really describe it but I followed it for the longest time.
Sure.
And do you think it's right because this woman has an alternative belief from the Democrats / Republicans, whatever, that she should have been taken off those committees? JD, let's start with you.
I don't think that's the case. I don't think they're going to move her because she has alternative different beliefs than they have. I don't think that's at all. I mean, they don't have any problems with, Republicans who are sane and logical that have different beliefs than them being on committees. So that's not so. I feel like when you start denying that school shootings happened and that this was just a government job, now we're talking about dangerous. This is a person who's dangerous. You're talking about a person who's threatened the life of the House Speaker and don't want to go through the metal detectors when she goes to work. Now we're talking about somebody that's really dangerous. And so she has no business, in my opinion, on a education committee.
Yeah.
Glenn, you agree with that?
Yeah. Let's take it even a step further. When I saw the hype at first, so I had to start digging. She's had this. It wasn't just to get elected, or it was after she was elected too. And listen, we're all different. We're going to have different opinions and beliefs. But when she made the comment and talking about 9/11 and the hoax and it wasn't a plane that went into the Pentagon and this further conspiracy stuff, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I do agree with the minority leader, McCarthy.
Kevin
I
McCarthy.
believe is his name.
Kevin McCarthy.
You have to be careful. I mean, it's a slippery slope.
Right.
And what I can tell you is this much. If she can get rehabilitated, and do some things, then I don't have a bit of problem putting her back on the committees. Wouldn't have a care in the world. But I think is every single legislature, be it in the House or in the Senate, every congressperson, they owe a higher standard of duty to the flag and to the people in this country, regardless of your party, to carry yourself a certain way for us to look up to, for us to admire, for us to set standards for all of us. And this is one of the problems that I think is a microcosm of where we're at with our government at the present time, or not government, but some of our leaders, is that we have to hold them higher standard, I do believe now, more than ever. There has to be more transparency so that we can believe again in our government. QAnon showed one thing, I believe more than any, just like Black Lives Matters and some of the others, is that we have our government leaders are out of touch with people in a sense. In a very large sense is that they don't know what it's like in the day-to-day lives of the majority of the constituents. And it's Democrats, it's Republicans, it's independents, it's libertarians. When you're sitting there and all you hear is the voices of the people who are paying your bills, the lobbyists, things of that nature, and the people back home are trying to figure out how to survive and keep the power on, or how to get, a job, or how to keep the doors open at their businesses and how to help them thrive. If that's not important to them, that's where our real problem is. And I listen, I'm all for the First Amendment. I believe that, what they put out there, I don't believe it, but I believe that they had the right to do it. But when you pass a certain point, in law school, we learned that you're not allowed to get on a plane and just yell bomb and fake news. You're not allowed to walk into a movie theater and yell fire, and create a riot type mentality. That's when it crosses a line. And it was there for a while. It was simmering and boiling to the point. And there were multiple people on January 6th that should be held accountable. And regardless of party affiliation, that they should be held accountable. And this is just a carryover from that much. And somebody better be getting control down there in Washington of the circumstances to get it back to a level of respectability. Because they couldn't even agree to sit down in some format and figure something out on the budget. I mean, I know this is not and it just shows me the old days when you could see, this person, and I mean, even, Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, how they got along. They may have disagreed, but my gosh, they you've got a problem when you can't even sit down now and eat and just talk as one another in a civil manner. And this is just another tipping point in the, in the whole thing, and it's got to get fixed.
No, I agree. I agree with everything Glenn said there. I think that's well said. As far as me, I'm kind of like what McCarthy said. You are kind of entering a slippery slope, but I think that what she said was so extreme that you had to do it. I think that you had to because it was really extreme. Like I said, not denying the school shootings, things like that. I mean, that's silly. And so I agree with what both of you said actually. And I know that's a rare occasion, right, JD, that we totally agree. But I do agree. Yeah, I know, right? So, but no, I agree. She was really extreme. And I'm like Glenn, if you can bring her back and get her rehabilitated, and as far as kind of understanding here's how things actually are. And then I have no problem with her going back on a committee, same as it would be if it was AOC or one of them, somebody that's far left. If they remove them for some reason, and then brought them back, that would be okay with me.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think that's the spirit of the law and the spirit of what we do in this country is we disagree, and it's fine to disagree. And it's good that we disagree, and it's good that we have open debate, and it's good that we have checks and balances. But being a crazy person is not good. That's not good for anybody to deny and threaten the House or the Speaker of the House's life, and then say you don't want to go through a metal detector. That's not okay, man. To me, that's just not.
Yeah.
And,
no.
I got kudos though with that much to the 11 that stood up and said this is not acceptable either. Kudos to the 10.
Absolutely.
That did that before because they're catching backlash too. Listen, we have to hold, more importantly, I believe, the sanctity of the red, white, and blue than we do party.
Absolutely.
And it has to be held at such a level that it's God, a country, God, country, and then party, if you will. And until we have that mentality, we're going to have more problems like this.
So let's stay in D.C. for a second. And this was something, Glenn, I don't know that J.D. had mentioned that we might bring up, but I'm going to throw it out there because I'm kind of learning about it myself, and I just wanted to kind of see what you guys thought. Apparently Biden, as I like to call him, Dictator Biden, and his 40-some executive orders, he basically signed another executive order that said, he rolled back something that Trump did really towards the end of his presidency, to take some regulations off fighting the opioid crisis. And it was actually something that Biden himself had said that he wanted to do. And then he came back, and when he got in, he signed something rolling that back because he said it didn't cut the mustard or it didn't meet the standard or whatever. And it sounded like to me it was more of a, dig at Trump. Let's unroll every single thing he did, whether we agree with it to be good or not. JD, I know I just kind of sprung that on you here before the show, but have you been able to look at that at all?
So what I looked at was, he did sign an executive order rolling back the opioid, whatever it was. But all it did, man, from what I can tell, is made physicians, the Trump executive made physicians not have to take a day of training before they could prescribe certain medication to help people get off opioids, like a Suboxone or things of that nature. And so now that Biden's rolled that back, they've got to go back and take this 1 day of training. So to me, it's like I understand people's upset because he's signed these executive orders, but to me, that's not really like a big deal. I do feel like still the executive orders are a bigger deal than this particular executive order. I don't like the president can just sign off all these executive orders and all the power of the president. It definitely needs to be reined in, man.
Yeah. What do you know anything about that, Glenn? Have you seen anything about that?
No, I haven't. But the opioid issue is personal on a couple of different levels because I see it on both fronts. When you have legislatures that are how do I put this? No different than insurance adjusters that are telling doctors how to practice medicine, we have a problem. There is no quote painometer. I've been at this 24 years or so now, and are coming up. And you know what? No doctor, and everybody has a theory on how you judge someone's pain or not. But let's be honest. No one knows, and Do I think that sometimes doctors overprescribe stuff in certain circumstances? Yes. Do I think that they underprescribe at times? Yes. You know, an individual was in trial up here in Pike County. One of the physicians were, and it was really more for bookkeeping issues. And I'm not going to mention any names because it's really not my point. But I know his attorney, and he and I spoke quite candidly about it. And the problem the U.S. government brought someone in out of Indiana, and who talked about having that you give Tylenol or aspirin or something Tylenol or aspirin, one of the two, for someone who had a back fusion. And I thought, where in the world is that in the standard of care? So, you know, when we have, when we have an extremity on either end, we have a problem. I do believe that if an individual has been on opioids for a period of time, there is an issue that becomes, and we know that becomes where they get kind of immune to it. It's not working at the same level. And so I do believe that there needs to be a better system with the doctors to look at and say, and with the insurance carriers and say, there's times that people who get addicted, and how do we get them off? Insurance companies don't want to pay for getting someone off either when they need it. They don't want that cost, and so there you have that flavor to add into it. But some people take it to go to work. A lot of miners were taking it to go to work just to keep the food on the table. Why is that wrong? It's a slippery slope. But I hate to tell everybody, the legislatures need to stay out of the room between the doctor and the patient as much as possible, and quit letting these adjusters dictate, because I know how much somebody likes the word dictate here, but be the dictator, if you will, on the treatment of somebody. I mean, it's preposterous.
No, I think those are great points, and I like that the kind of the point of view that you're coming from too, because it's what you deal with every day. You've probably seen it in a much different way than any of us have actually seen what we're having to deal with. It's one of those things where, I like to make fun, just more so with JD, and call Biden a dictator, because I know JD agrees with me on this. We don't agree on the executive order thing, and when you do 40. That's insane. That's why I like to give JD a hard time about that. The fact that he rolled that back, that's one of those that I'm going to keep my eye on, though. As far as does he, because Biden even said himself when he was campaigning that this is something that we need to address. I think to what Glenn was saying, was he said, hey, we need to address this where it's not so hard on these doctors to be able to prescribe what their patients need. And I think what Trump was trying to do, because it was lauded by the doctors themselves, then he kind of rolled it back. So that's one of those things that I'm going to keep my eye on, JD, as far as kind of looking to see what Biden does down the road with it.
So everybody take a big deep breath. But this is something I agree with Trump on. And I think it sounds like Glen Martin Hammond does too, that, we need to keep our lawmakers out of the patient's rooms. The doctor needs to be in there. We need legislators out of there.
I wish you all could see some of the stuff that I deal with on a daily basis. When you're watching an individual that a doctor doesn't know to go left or to go right or to go forward or go backwards for treat a patient, they can't get approval for something. Some things it's simple, certain tests, or you can't come in. We got to do it the next time. I mean, some of this stuff has to end. If you can find out how to nip it in the bud early on, nip it in the bud, and then go from there. Sometimes it's hard. You can't even get an MRI unless you've had injections in the spine, or look, this MRI shows you need surgery. I don't care what kind of injections they're going to run you through or pills they're going to throw in your mouth. You need it. Why go through all the other nonsense? Let's address it. Let's get it fixed and then move on. Put people at the table that have real practical experience, not people negotiating this stuff out that only look at numbers, that are caring about a bottom line. I mean, it has to, and that was the problem I had with the Obamacare, is that you had individuals from the health insurance industry, you had individuals from the pharmaceutical that did it, how they were going to make money to so much off of this stuff. And there wasn't enough people at the table that had real world practical experience on the front line.
And your point's well taken. And one of the things that Dr. Madden talked about when we interviewed him, Jimmy Don, was the lack of training for doctors, even in medical school, to deal with people that were suffering with addiction. And until I think we fix that on that end, man, we're finding an uphill battle. It's going to be tough because those are the people on the front lines of it, you know, in the doctor's room with the patients.
Have you all seen the? I don't mean to cut you off, but you brought something up that just triggered my mind. Did you all see the 60-minute series on the pharmaceutical industry? How they targeted certain areas?
Yes.
And they flooded the market, and we had to be one of those markets.
There's books about it, man. There's one. Wonderland is one about Portsmouth, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the other one, Jimmy Don? I read about Virginia. It's right over it. I'll send it to you. But there's books written about it. We were definitely targeted by Purdue Pharma. Absolutely targeted.
But it wasn't just Purdue Pharma. It's all of them. And that was the thing about it. You know, look.
But Purdue Pharma had the OxyContin, though. That was the one that highly addictive. And they tried to tout it like it was not going to be addictive, that you couldn't break it up and snort it, and all these other things. And it's a bunch of bullshit, really.
Exactly right. But the point I was making is they go and hire these attorneys of all things that are in working for the Food and Drug Administration to show them how to beat the system so they can get more. And they had the warning systems in going off everywhere, and they just turned a blind eye to it. You know, I mean, there was the FDA turned a blind eye to the whole show, and here we are, and who's held accountable for it? You know, I mean, it's
JD, these damn attorneys. I'm glad we wouldn't have one on a show, on our show, right? I mean, what are you going to do? All right, so let's.
My dad's watching too, by the way. What's up, Dad?
Yeah,
he was a judge, right? So what's up, Judge Henry?
I say that with love. We love Glenn. All right, so let's go to home a little bit. The teacher's pension. There was I believe, a vote, and it was. And correct me if I'm wrong here, JD, because I just glanced at it real quick before we came on. But from what I read, they basically voted that new teachers would fall under a different form of retirement to take a burden off the current retirement system. Is that about right?
I'll let Glenn fill this one. He's the expert on this, man. So
is that about right, Glenn? And what I said there?
They created another system for the younger ones, a tier. And when I say that much, but remember what we're dealing with, it's the same one that they've been trying to pass for a while.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Isn't that the one that Bevan was kind of pushing, and the teachers went nuts and went down there? And
here it again. They finally, again, they've passed it. And talking to some people, more specifics about it, because I've not had the chance to develop, deep, get into the semantics of it. But apparently, and my problem with this much is, we know the baby boomer generation is top heavy in our society, and there's a big drop off in population. The baby boomer generation are retiring or have retired. Now you have nobody paying into this system. And people need to remember this much. When there's no money coming in, right? Cost of living going up. They're not on Social Security. They didn't have access to it. Now the money's cut off. What's going to happen? It's got to come somewhere. And that somewhere is going to be from the three of us and everybody else that's watching. I hate to tell everybody, but that's where it's going to come from. So they cut the percentages back on the contribution rates of the youngers to allow them to either contribute more or do some other, and even the school systems too. The problem with it is this much. When you start cutting back more and you have multiple ones and they're going into different chambers, if you will, there's less money going in to fix the situation. And in 10 to 15 years, we'll be having this discussion, why is it broke? Because it'll be more broke than anything we've ever seen at the present time.
Well, don't you think it's more broke than anything we've ever seen right now?
Yeah, okay, 37 to 41%. But when you're talking 7%, I mean, let's put that in historic numbers, we've got family members, that are going to be, or we're going to have to pick up the tab for them both in the tax situation and the other. Think about it this way. We pay into the Social Security right now to keep the other ones up that are ahead of us. Right, wrong, good or bad, but what we're doing is helping to solidify that much. So when we saw Trump, who cut the funding off for the federal employees to pay in for FICA, it was already draining it at such an alarming rate that we looked and we saw what, 2024, 2023 to 2025, it was going to be bankrupt. We're in 2021. And I'm using numbers off Fox Business. So when we look at it from that perspective, even if it's more, it was 5 years from now, it doesn't matter. The problem is it is a significant issue, but as baby boomer generation takes a dive, at that time, this is going to alleviate a lot of it. The problem that we have a $9 to $7 billion liability from bad investments and already with the teachers' pensions that there's lawsuits over. And people were wanting to stop those lawsuits, again, those bad lawyers, to recoup those monies to go back into the system. I think what they really need to look at is combining some systems so that there's a greater pool of money, narrowing what they're allowed to invest in to make it more secure, bonds, things of that nature. And again, when I ran, my proposal was if you do an actual infrastructure project and you bond it, earmark those funds over to solidify specifically because it's a win-win situation at that time for the state. But that it is what it is. But we have a major problem with our with that system in this state.
Let me ask you this, Glenn. So, I mean, I'm not a pension expert by any means, but as far as the biggest issue, even with Social Security and the pensions, is the monies that were supposed to be going into those systems to fund them were being routed, and other things were being done with that money. And so, as far as I can see, because my wife is a school teacher, this is a very real issue to me. Sure. Because in 10 to 15 years, Amy's going to be looking to retire, and she doesn't have access to Social Security. She can't draw my Social Security. If something I've paid and I max out every year in October, as far as what I put in, the real issue is we need these politicians to quit grabbing that money and putting it in other places, actually run a budget.
Yeah, that's one of the things. You go look at all the retirement systems that you have. You're going to have to look at and say, because number one, legislature, as I understand, is fully funded. Their pension system is. The executive branches and the judiciaries are all fully funded. My problem with it is this much. It shouldn't be a must funded. It should be a shall funded off the top, and then you figure out from there.
I agree.
I don't and then you're going to have to make it more transparent so that your wife and where your money's being invested in. So my mom knows where her money's being invested. So my aunt knows. So my cousins know. All the ones that are in the system know exactly where their money's been. I mean, you get to invest. If you invest with, I don't know, Charles Schwab, you know where your money is. You know where the money's going to, and you can look it up to see how those transactions. Why can't that?
I think that makes good sense.
So I've got an opinion on this too. So I feel like, what we need to do in Kentucky is expand our tax base. And the way we do that is bring in new industry. And I feel like it's something that Bevin or Bashir has not done so far at this point, is look to bring in, or he hasn't been active enough for me with the gambling or the hemp or the, I'm all for, medicinal marijuana. I think it should be a great thing. And I think it'd be a great thing for our state. So the answer to all these things is to expand our tax base and bring in new industry to the state. Quit doing what you've always done, man, because you're always gonna get what you got.
No, I agree. We know if you look at every state around us, they all have gambling, don't they?
Yeah.
And
Kentucky money's going there.
Yeah, and I think the issue for Kentucky is that the people who are wanting to invest in, from my discussions with legislatures, they want to have it not as on the statute per se. They want it in the Constitution so that you don't have that issue. Then if it's done away with, do away with the statute, repeal it, and then they're left there with that big of an investment. I can relate. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, think about it. If you're going to make a big investment and then all of a sudden it's done away with in 5 years and you've lost your money. So, we're going to have to look at it. I mean, West Virginia has beat us of all things to the punch on this, on both medical marijuana and on the issue with the gambling. And we in Kentucky, we have competing forces. We have the horse industry that's competing. That doesn't want us that realistically is not in favor of this for the most part, because they've had it all to themselves for so long.
Right.
And, my thought was to begin with is to put it off in quadrants. Let's say there's 2 or 3. We're going to do a test one with Kentucky or one in one half of the state and one in the other. Where do you locate that to make the best economic benefit that's centrally located? And go from there. But, we're going to have to do something because we're going nowhere fast.
Well, I'll tell you what I think, and JD, you may agree or not agree with this. I'm not sure. But I think if you support the lottery and you support horse racing and you don't support sports betting, then you're a hypocrite.
And you're in a few, man. You're in a few.
Because the lottery itself takes advantage of the poorest of us, because those are the people who generally play the lottery.
Sure.
And
that's why they're poor, because they make bad decisions.
And it's, what I'm saying? But I think that is something that we should get ahead of. I'm like Glenn. Everybody else around us, Justice, for anything you want to say about him over in West Virginia, has done a pretty decent job with that as far as kind of getting ahead, understanding the industry, and here's what you got to have, because he knows coal, that's been their biggest industry for so long, is basically gone. Mm-hmm. And, you've got, like JD said, you've got to expand your tax base somewhat and where you can drag in revenue. So I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And even with the pension, though, let's be honest. One of the problems, you can't take how many millions of people, let's be realistic. When you're talking about how many billions of dollars that is in the big Sandy area from the retired pension system a year, teachers alone, billions. In 5 to 10 years, that's gone. You think it's bad here now? Multiply that. Even
Michael
with
Harrison's comment up.
A 6% reduction in the pay-in, I think there's a 4 or 6% pay-in for both. We are in significant trouble.
So Michael Harrison said, I know Churchill Downs was against casinos in Kentucky years ago. They were scared they would lose money because of it, which makes, really, if you think about it, no sense to me at all. Because those guys are already set up for betting, for gambling. Mm-hmm. Like the dog track over in West Virginia, man, cross lanes. Those guys, they switched right over to, poker and blackjack and slot machines. So I would think these people would be all on board for it, but is it just they're scared of the competition, I guess?
Well, here's the real BS of it, JD, is they have slot machines in these places right now. They just call them historic gaming machines, and they're slot machines.
Right.
And they've got, because the Supreme Court in Kentucky said that you could not do that. So they've had to shut a lot of that stuff down.
Put that comment up there.
Where's that? Okay. So they're getting a lot of heat right now for that.
So they run buses from Nashville to Kentucky to gamble. That's smart. That's smart business by those casinos. Or from Nashville to Kentucky to gamble.
Probably at the horse tracks.
Oh, at the horse tracks. I got you. So because there's no gambling in Tennessee. But Indiana and West Virginia have been raping us for years, guys, and Ohio.
Mm-hmm. And Tennessee does have it at Cherokee, the lake down there.
I actually think that's North Carolina, though.
Oh, is it in North Carolina? I was thinking that it was part of right outside of Gatlinburg in Tennessee. But, still we have the issue. And then when you do those things and you can increase sales tax revenue like that, then you can eventually lower your personal income tax base or percentages down to where it is more of a spend-based sales tax revenue for your general revenue fund.
I got to say something real quick, JD. I'm not liking this because I've agreed a whole lot tonight with what you and Glen Martin have both said, and I feel like a damn Democrat. And I ain't
Come
liking it.
Come over to the good side, brother.
I ain't liking it. I was like, what is going on here? It's one of those things where a lot of the issues we're talking about tonight, I think common sense applies.
Right.
Use some common sense.
Absolutely. But now, to be fair, it's been Republican legislation, especially on the state level in Kentucky,
I agree with
It's
that.
held a lot of this up and stopped this.
I agree with that, and I think that's wrong. I mean, I really do, because I agree. You've got to expand your tax base.
Right.
And, a lot of it is because they'll go back and say, we live in the Bible Belt, and so they'll come back, and we live right in the smack in the middle of it. And I know my mom, for example, she doesn't want gambling. Sure. She thinks that we won't even vote to go wet in our little county when you can literally drive 5 minutes and spend your tax dollars in another county.
We're wet on Warfield, buddy. You go.
Well, yeah, over there on the good side of the hill, right, JD?
So listen, let's get to the last. We got to talk about the Super Bowl. I got to go.
Get ready. I know I had a couple other topics, but we're going to skip those. I know it's getting close to time. My boy JD's got to focus, because last year, Glenn, we tried to do a Super Bowl show, and I lost JD like 15 minutes in. And I was basically doing the show by myself. It was like, So, all right. So we'll go JD last, because he really has something riding. So, Glenn, what do you think? Who's going to win the Super Bowl tonight?
Listen, I don't know who's going to win. I'm going to tell you that much, but I am going to pull for the Bucks for one reason and one reason only.
Jesus.
Our boy Edwards from UK is on there, and for him, I'm pulling. And, I tell you, I expect a 42-45 type ball game. I think there's going to be a lot of points. And I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be exciting. And I think it's going to kind of help push or air in the new style of football that you're going to see, hopefully, at Kentucky this coming year as well.
Amen.
So let me ask you. I mean, I know you are rooting for the Bucks, but who are you picking to win?
I tell you what, the more I watch, I think Kansas City, logically, has more weapons. And I think that that defensive end for them is probably in a better position. I just really think, though, that the wreck of Andy Reid's son and what's happened, there's always that team that has that controversy a few days before, and it tends to throw everything off kilter form in preparation. Right. You go back to Ickey Woods and that issue and some of the others over the years, and majority of the time the other team wins. So
the Eagles' son, let me see you right now. All right, Jimmy Don. Who's got the Bucks?
So for me, I'm picking the Chiefs. Now, I also am, because of Edwards, I don't care if you're a Kentucky guy and you're on a team. I generally watch those teams and I pull for those teams. But it's hard to count out Brady, though, guys. He's got 6 of those things. I mean, this is where he shows up. This is where the man shows up and plays ball. And I still think the Chiefs are probably going to win just overall, because what the Bucs can do is they'll rush the passer, and they can rush the passer really well. But Mahomes is really, really good against the blitz. They're going to have to get to him and actually get him on the ground to even have a chance. And that is almost impossible to do. So I think the Chiefs are going to probably win. I'm like Glenn. I think it's going to be a really high-scoring game. Like, I'm thinking probably 44, 36, 38, somewhere in that ballpark as far as points go. But I think the Chiefs will pull it off. And I honestly am saying that too, though, as much as JD and I give each other a hard time. I want JD's team to win. So,
that's the boy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be a total homer.
No, really? You think the Bucs are going to win?
No, I don't. Like, much respect to the Bucs. I think they flew under the radar all year long. Then they turned it on. The playoffs came in. They just wiped people out, man. They went to Green Bay and won. So we know they're capable of winning big ball games. But the same thing I've said for the last 2 years, I think we got the best player on the field every time we step on the field, and Patrick Mahomes. I just think he's better than everybody else. And we got Andy Reid, and I think we're gonna pull this thing out tonight. I'm gonna go 34-24, Kansas City.
Good. All right, man. We appreciate you guys joining us, Glenn. Thank you, brother. It's good to see you, man. Did you get your shirt? I left it with the lady at your office. Okay,
yes,
all right.
Yes.
All right, good deal. So, guys, we appreciate you guys checking us out tonight, coming and hanging out for a little while. We appreciate all the chat. Of course, you know where you can find us, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The podcast you'll be able to find on Podbean, iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify, all the places where you can get podcasts. We've had a bunch of crazy downloads, JD, here the last little bit. So been a lot of downloads, and so we appreciate that.
That's what we do, brother.
That's what we do. That's right. So, guys, as we end this thing, tonight from myself, from JD, and from our boy Glen Martin. No matter how bad your week's been, no matter how bad your day's going, if you just add bourbon, it always gets a little bit better. We'll see you guys next week.